Good morning everyone and welcome back to the Friday Kitchen. We had lovely feedback after the last cookery demonstration, St Botolph's first cookery demo online. So we hope some of you are joining us again today for a second dose, and maybe some new people as well. So with Easter fast approaching, we've decided to concentrate on Easter, even though it's Mothering Sunday this coming Sunday. But because we don't have another cookery demonstration before Easter, I really thought I would hone in on Easter goodies. So this morning we're going to be baking some hot cross buns, but they're going to be very slightly different in as much as we're going to make them in exactly the same way, but we're going to be putting them into muffin cases, so hot cross muffin buns, which is a novel idea, and I just like the idea really. It makes them look even prettier, and a lovely way of giving them away as gifts in their little muffin cases. So I'm going to start with the ingredients. We've got the flour in here already. I'm going to put in the cinnamon and the mixed spice into there. I'm going to grate some lemon zest very quickly. I've given this lemon a good scrub to clean it. I love hot cross buns, and I tend to make hot cross buns every year if I can. I just love homemade hot cross buns. They're not as light and fluffy as the ones you can buy in the shop, or at least mine aren't. They do tend to be a bit more dense, a bit heavier, but I love making them and I love eating them. So that's lemon zest gone in. I've got golden caster sugar here, that's all going in. And now the recipe said melted butter, but actually I've decided to go with softened butter, because you've got to be very careful not to put liquids in that are going to be too hot. So I've done this with melted butter, but cooled it down just to a tepid temperature. But this time I thought, no, I'm going to go with softened butter, and I'm convinced it's going to work equally well. Let me grab a cloth. And we're going to put in a couple of beaten eggs, and we're going to put in some lukewarm milk. But first of all, I'm going to put the yeast in. Now I'm using fast action dried yeast, and this recipe has asked for 10 grams. Often with bread recipes, it will ask for 7 grams, which is 1 sachet, but I've put a sachet and a bit to make it, because it's a rich dough, it will take longer to prove and to rise. So I'm actually putting in 10 grams of yeast, and the salt. They do advise you to put the salt and the yeast on opposite sides of the bowl, and I believe that's to do with the fact that the salt will make the yeast inactive if you put them together. So I don't know if that's correct, but anyway, I'm doing as the recipe says. So everything's going in. I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to put a bit of the milk, and I'm going to start it off mixing. Here we go. And I'm going to mix this for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add the fruit. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love Easter baking. And I love Easter and everything that's associated with it. So it gives me pleasure in making something like hot cross buns. Wonderful. Now that's just mixing gently together. I'm going to add a bit more of the milk. Give it a good knead. Now you can do all this with a handheld food mixer, you can do it all by hand. So while this is mixing, I think we'll just cut away and I'll come back to you in a minute or two. Hello everyone, just to show you what stage we're at with the dough, you can see that we've got a big clump of dough here. I haven't added all the milk yet and I'm about to add some more. I just want you to see it at the different stages. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. The recipe does say you may not need it all. You're aiming for a fairly soft dough, not too sticky, but definitely soft, but malleable. So round it goes. Michael, do you want to hone in on here to see the dough going round? If you were doing this by hand, you would take 10 minutes of kneading at this stage. This should take probably 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that. Okay, I'll come back to you in a few minutes. Okay everyone, so we're at the stage where I've beaten with the dough hook the dough. You can see that it's got a gloss to it. I've only added 175 mils of the milk. There's 100 mils left here, but I feel right now that that's enough moisture in there. So I'm going to add the fruit in and get that incorporated, and then there'll be a tiny bit of hand kneading, which I love. There we go. So the fruit's gone in. Now I've chosen to put cherries in. I know you don't normally get cherries in hot cross buns, but I rather like the idea of cherries, so I'm trying that out for the first time this year. So I've got a mixture of sultanas, raisins, chopped mixed peel, and chopped cherries. So I'm going to knead those in. So of course the dough is getting richer and richer, and so therefore it will take longer to rise than an ordinary bread dough, because this is a sweet bread dough. So it's got everything working against it really, and it takes anything from an hour and a half up to 3 hours to prove, depending on where you put it. It needs to go somewhere warm for the next stage of proving. And I'm going to put it in front of our fireplace. Michael's lit the fire already this morning. So I'm going to put the dough covered in front of the fire, and hopefully that will be a perfect temperature. I've risen bread dough before in my oven, set at a very, very low temperature, well below 50 degrees, but I do find it overproves and you lose some of the definition. So if you're making a bread plat, for instance, it tends to really spread out and prove too quickly, so you lose some of that definition of the plat. So I would say this is ready. Now I'm going to go in with my hands now. So that's looking a bit sticky, but hopefully not too sticky. And I'm going to turn this out onto a floured board. There we go. So, flour on the board. And I've got one of these hard-edged spatulas that I really love. I don't get on terribly well with those soft silicone spatulas. I find it doesn't get everything out. I'm going to flour my hands. Now, I'm not a bread maker, and if any amongst you are bread makers, you'll probably be thinking, oh, don't put too much flour in, da-da-da-da. I'm not a bread maker. I just love playing at making dough and having a go, basically. Now, I can tell I probably have put a bit too much flour on there. So I'm going in and really pushing hard down. I'm trying to get rid of that flour really, and to get it back to feeling a bit more soft. I have a suspicion this could have done with being a weeny bit softer, but I don't know. We shall soon see the results. Now I'm going to pop this into a greased bowl, a pre-greased bowl, and I've already greased a piece of cling film, so I'm going to cover it so when it does rise, if it does reach the top of the bowl, it won't stick to the cling film. You could use a tea towel. So now, there we go. It's all ready for proofing and it's going in front of the fire. I'm just going to walk you all into the lounge to look at the bread dough rising. As you can see, I've got it in front of the fire and actually it's coming along nicely. It's been in here for about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4. So that's the dough proving, and we need it to be double in size. So I'll come back to you all once it's ready. So while the dough is continuing to prove, we're going to not waste a moment. We're going to make up the paste that we're going to use to pipe the crosses onto each of the hot cross buns. So I'm putting a couple of tablespoons of, I'm just using the bread flour that I've been using. I'll just put a bit more in. And a little drop of water. Now start steady. You can always add water to it, but once you've made this too runny, you'd have to keep on adding flour to thicken it. So what we're aiming for is a thick batter, stiff enough to pipe, but not too stiff that you can't pipe it. That is too stiff at the minute. So the flour absorbs quite a bit of water. I put, for general guidelines, I think I put 2 tablespoons of flour and water to mix to a thick paste. So just pulverise that into a bit of a paste. Right, and you want it to be able to pipe. It's a weeny bit lumpy, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And what I'm going to do, I use a piping bag for this. A piping bag with a nozzle in the end. If you haven't got a piping bag, use a polythene bag and pop this batter into the bag, squeeze it into the corner and just snip a teeny bit of the corner of the bag off, and that can act as your piping bag. So I'm now going to transfer this into the piping bag, and this can quite happily sit here waiting for the hot cross buns to be ready to be piped before they go into the oven. That should be sufficient. So I squeeze it down and hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit oozing out of the bottom with a gentle squeeze. So that sort of piping consistency. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there now. And the next thing I'm going to do is just put some sugar and water into a saucepan to make the sugar syrup glaze for when the hot cross buns come out of the oven, and while they're still warm you'll want to glaze them. So I'm going to put 4 tablespoons of white sugar. It can be granulated, it can be caster sugar, doesn't really matter, and an equal quantity of water this time, no guesswork. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so mix that around, take it across to the stove and just melt it gently on the stove, very gently, until all the sugar crystals have dissolved. So don't get it too hot and keep stirring, and you'll know when the crystals have all disappeared. And then again, that can sit on one side and be ready for brushing on when the hot cross buns come out of the oven. So here we have the dough. It's been rising for the best part of 3 hours, really. Now you can see it's not risen to the very top of the bowl. To be perfectly honest, whether it's ready or not, I want to go in because I haven't got time to wait any longer, basically. So I'm going to test it out. I could have easily left it for another hour. But I think this will be okay. I'm going to lightly flour this work surface and just give it a little knead. That's it. Knock it well back, and then we're going to cut it into pieces. You can see that I've got my sharp-edged spatula here that gets up all the... I'm going to roll this into a sausage, put a bit of elbow grease in, put your back into it, and I'm going to cut that in half, pop it back into the bowl, and just roll this a bit more into a sausage. You will need a bit of flour on your hands and a bit of flour on the worktop. And the aim is to cut it into at least 12 pieces in total, or you may get more out. The other day, I got 16 hot cross buns out. Now I'm going to transfer it to my cutting board. And these are my muffin cases that I'm going to put them in. So you don't want to fill the muffin cases. You want to certainly half fill them. Let's see. I'm just going to show you rolling them. It's easier to roll them into a sausage and then start going round and round in circles, and then gradually ease your hand up until your hand is cupped over the dough. And there we are, and I'm going to pop that into there, and again roll it into a sausage. Well, now that muffin case, look, the dough has come almost to the top of the muffin case, but it will rise to above the case. Now go round and round and round, cup your hand, and there's another one. And you keep doing that until you've used up all your dough. And I think we're going to get about 16 hot cross muffin buns out of this. If you were doing just hot cross buns and just rolling them and popping them onto a greased or a lined baking tray, you could make them bigger, smaller, whatever size you like. But this is to do them to the size of a muffin case. So you keep going, and then you're going to cover them with the greased cling film or tea towel, whatever, and then put them back in the warm place. So these are going to go back in front of our fire to prove for another hour. And when they're well risen, then we're going to come back and we're going to pipe the crosses on. This is just to show you how many muffin hot cross buns this has made. It's made 16. Okay, so now they're going to be covered, put in front of the fire for the next proving. Okay everyone, well you can see that the hot cross muffin buns have now risen, and if Michael comes closer in, you'll see that they've risen high above the muffin cases. So, and now that took an hour and a half. I could have done it in an hour, but because I was doing a Zoom call, I knew I wouldn't be able to attend to them. So I put them slightly in a place slightly cooler in the room, and then for the last 10-15 minutes put them right in front of the fire. So we're going to put the crosses on now. I'll start over here. So this is the gooey flour and water paste, and I'm just going to go in, do that, swizzle it off. They're a bit gooey. Right.
Maggie, the whole process does seem to have taken quite a while.
Yes.
Is that likely to put people off, do you think?
Yes, it might very well do, but what I can suggest is if you want to be eating these buns by 11s or lunchtime, start your dough off the previous evening and put it for its first proof covered in the fridge. And then the next morning, as early as you possibly can, take the dough out of the fridge, bring it to room temperature, and put it somewhere warm so that it completes its full proving. And then you can shape them and prove them their second time and get them in the oven. And so hopefully you'd have them for 11s by then. But Michael and I have done these in stages today and videoed each stage because we've been doing other things as well. So they've had to fit in around us. Whoops. Oh, I can smell them. I can smell the lovely dried fruits and the spices because they've got cinnamon and mixed spice in. So they're going in the oven now, 180, for approximately 15 minutes. Keep an eye on them because they do tend to brown quite quickly because of the sweet and rich dough. So I'm putting one on the upper shelf. I think that's actually going to be too high. I'm going to move those down a wee bit. That's it. We don't want them to burn at the top of the oven. Right. Okay, you can see we've got the tray laid and we're going to have a cuppa and we're going to sample one of the hot cross buns in about half an hour. These will take 15 minutes, so we'll see you in 15 minutes. Okay everyone, so we're almost at the end now. The hot cross muffin buns have had 15 minutes in the oven and I reckon they're done just fine. And we're going to glaze them. This is the sugar and water syrup, equal parts white sugar to water, and while they're still warm, fresh from the oven, going to give them a lovely sugary glaze all over. Lovely, this gives them a lovely sweet topping. Michael and I are going to enjoy one with a cuppa any minute. Are you drooling? I wish I could send you all one as a sample. The proof of the pudding, they say. There we are. And I've got a few, I've got 4 more there. I'll do those in a moment. So these are going to be hot. I would normally put them on a cooling rack, but for the video, I'll pop them onto a cake stand so they look all pretty and yummy. So far they're not too hot. to handle. You could cool them a bit longer in the tin. You've just got to be a bit careful. Whoopsie daisy. We've got a cross that's joined. Just got to, what was I saying? Yes, you could cool them a bit longer in the tin. Just got to be careful that this sugar syrup doesn't make the cake cases stick to the tin, else you'll never get them out. But you could leave them in the tin a bit longer to continue. They will continue cooking for a few minutes. So just piling them up here. Ooh, this one's going to be stubborn. That's it. Lovely. Let me move that away. Okay, so there we have our hot cross muffin buns, and they're lovely to take on a little picnic in their little bun cases. They're lovely packaged up and given as gifts to friends and neighbours. Just finally to say, yes, there's an extra video doing Easter mini egg blondies. Hope you enjoyed that recipe, and I'm going to try and find time to put one, maybe two more Easter baking goodies online in case anyone's interested. So here we are, the finished hot cross muffin buns.